First of all, Nilesh, thank you so much for finding the time. Pleasure to have
Thank
you
you
here.
very much for having me here.
Thank you. So this is part of an ongoing conversation series that we're having with leaders like you in the sports space,
Hmm.
trying to answer questions that we keep getting as Sports Village from different folks who reach out to us, kids, parents, uh, professionals who want to join the industry, even sometimes other companies, other brands, other academies, and so on. And the
Interesting.
idea for this conversation was, this whole notion around sports MBA and what that means, and what are the different nuances of it, and some do's and don'ts, and so on. So we'll get into that. Broadly, the structure is a 30-minute conversation, and then some questions and answers that people have.
Sure.
From an introduction point of view, everybody keeps introducing you as the guy who took a wicket on the first ball in Test cricket in India for India. So, is that how you would prefer to be introduced, or is there a different introduction? Because I keep seeing this everywhere. When I read up on you, everywhere it's just this.
Well, I think the good part about that particular introduction is that yes, I'm part of a world record and I'm part of a history, which I
Well
would like
done.
to keep it with me for the rest of my life. So,
Well done.
so
Yes.
that's the positive side of it. And what I would right now feel is that look, this is my life after cricket. So I'm happily
Mm, mm,
retired and
mm,
now introduce IISM in the sports
mm,
management
mm,
education space. So I'm
mm,
happy that I'm actually getting the different dimension approach post cricketing life as well.
Interesting. Let's spend a minute on your very popular introduction. So, what did it feel like to get a cricket wicket on the first ball?
Well, trust me, I mean, when I got that wicket, I did not realize that it was a world record because it was the last over of the day. And
Oh,
it so
okay.
incidentally happened. Yeah, it so incidentally happened that I was just going through my routine of just changing over. And Sachin Tendulkar, who was our captain that time, he just
Yeah,
suddenly realized that Mavan Attapattu is at strike.
yeah.
And Rajesh Chauhan was to bowl that last over.
The Austin,
And
huh? Yeah,
for some reason, Sachin just felt that, it would be better that Nilesh just bowls the last over.
yeah,
So I rushed through all my processes and bowled that
yeah,
ball. And the
yeah.
rest is history. But I'm part of two record in the same test match.
Okay.
One is in my favor as an individual, and the second is against India, where Sri Lanka managed to score 952 runs in one inning. So I fielded
Ouch.
for next 3 days.
Ouch.
So I fielded for next 3 days trying to get another wicket. And so I always say that when I get introduced by saying that he's part of that world record, I say that look, I'm part of two records.
Yeah, let's not talk about the second one. I think let's just stay
Well,
with the first one.
it's a learning. No,
Yeah,
trust me.
sure,
I mean,
sure,
I look at
sure,
it positively.
sure.
To have that patience, perseverance, consistency. That's part of my learning.
Sure, sure, sure.
I always look at it as that my learning.
No, wonderful. I think that's a great approach. So let's talk about from playing for India to setting up ISM, and we'll come into the ISM journey afterward. But till that
Sure.
point, what happened and what led you to set this up?
I think the trigger point was IPL. I did not get a contract to play in IPL, and
Hmm.
then I was contemplating of retiring from first class and international cricket.
Okay, okay.
And then when I saw Lalit Modi offering a almost handsome amount to IMG UK to execute
Mm,
a
mm,
event like
mm,
IPL, that triggered off a thought suggesting that out of a billion plus population, can't we have
mm.
200 professionals who can take care of the big leagues like IPL? And the
Interesting.
answer was no. And that's how the actual thought process started, and that's the actual trigger point for us to
Mm,
have introduction of ISM, because up until that time when the IPL got introduced, India never have seen a
mm,
sports annual property, and in
mm,
form of
mm,
IPL,
mm,
that's the first introduction of business of sport into India context. Because globally, if you see worldwide, all over, the
mm.
business revolves around annual properties in sports.
Correct,
And in
correct.
India,
Mm,
we
mm,
did not have an annual property. So that's how the
mm,
thought
mm,
process got me and my wife
mm.
thinking into a
Okay.
direction where can we formalize a sports education in India?
Interesting,
And that's how
interesting.
the thought came in from
Mm.
2008-9. And thankful to I was thankful to BCCI and IPL for not giving me the contract which allowed me to introduce ISM.
Silver lining everywhere. We'll spend a few minutes on
Absolutely.
IISM and then talk at a generic level about sports MBA. And I
Okay.
noticed that IISM is International Institute of Sports Management and not Indian Institute of Sports Management.
That's
You
right.
know,
Because when we were
so tell me about that. What's the nuance there?
well, it's very simple. When you're trying to go through those things, Government of India came up with the GR saying that you can't use national and Indian into
Okay,
any of your
okay.
nomenclatures, and that's how we had no option but
Oh,
to think about International Institute of Sports Management. And of
okay,
course,
okay.
we had some international tie-ups as well. We had a
Mhm,
tie-up with Griffith University, Australia, initially. That's
mhm,
how the linkage we managed to achieve by
mhm,
giving those select credit points for the student
mhm.
pathway to Griffith University.
Interesting, interesting. So let's talk about sports MBA. While
Sure.
IISM is clearly the leader, is the first as per what you said. The last 10 years you've been doing this.
Yeah.
So so why a sports MBA? Why should anybody consider a sports MBA?
Well, it took us while also to get around that because when we
Hmm.
introduced that time, there weren't any universities who were willing to accept MBA in sports management as a full-fledged degree option or
Okay.
masters in sports management as a full-fledged degree option.
Hmm.
And that was one of the key areas which we wanted to work upon. But for first 4 years, we had to deliver the postgraduate program the autonomous way by having a
Hmm.
Griffith
Hmm.
University
Hmm.
pathway.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because, in India context, unfortunately, if the university degree gets associated with your management part, it
Hmm.
becomes an acceptable norm. And
Hmm. Hmm.
that's the acceptable term, if I have
Sure.
to so
Sure.
call it,
Sure. Sure.
from a parents to a student perspective.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then that's how we decided to associate and collaborate with Mumbai University and create a master's program in sports
Hmm.
management.
Hmm. And so today you have multiple programs, right? You have bachelor's, you have master's, you have a PGP. Just
That's
talk
right.
a bit about that.
Yeah, so we have right now three offerings, and we have introduced two more offerings in the same space from this academic year, which
Hmm.
will start from 2020-21. The idea is that we wanted to go slow because first we had only one program which was called postgraduate program in sports management. It was
Hmm.
for a
Hmm.
postgrad people.
Hmm.
When we collaborated with Mumbai University, then we thought of introducing a full-fledged bachelor's degree, which is a 3-year bachelor's program in sports management,
Hmm.
and a master's program in sports management as a
Got it.
full-fledged degree.
Got it.
Unfortunately, in India context, we are facing a huge challenge in having a specialized vertical within the sports management or business space, purely
Okay.
because of the demand-supply ratio, which industry is still not ready to accept. Hence,
Hmm.
we are generalizing it as a sports management degree. I don't see, it's going to be a short while where we see a specialization in sports marketing, sports management, sports operations as a full-fledged vertical within the management space. We
Tell me
have
a little.
introduced two more programs.
Tell me a little bit more about what you meant by demand supply mismatch. What do you mean by that?
See, the technical challenge we've been facing for last 9.5 years is that the
Hmm.
industry still does not have a recognition as an industry in
Hmm.
sports.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
personally feel that's a fundamental shift.
Hmm.
Entertainment in India is an industry, but sports is still not an industry in India. I see that as a huge gap in terms of
Hmm.
acceptance. The moment that gets accepted, the peripheral opportunities which needs to be created into the specialized vertical, right from corporates to a entrepreneur starting his or her own company,
Hmm.
this will get a set address or a it
Hmm.
will get a perspective for a lot of people to start accepting this as a full-fledged career option. And that's what
Hmm.
I mean by demand supply ratio. Currently there are more than almost 150 200 companies who associate with IPL as a sponsor,
Okay.
but do they have a dedicated sports uh, quota
Hmm.
to absorb
Hmm.
people? No, they don't have. I'm sure you've been in the market long enough to understand that space as well. People like
Hmm.
yourself who are more organized start offering, but you can only absorb limited seats every year.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
you need more and more organizations to be open and start these initiatives to be more structured. More that approach will help industry get established.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. And today the largest demand that you see across these multiple courses that you offer is in which kind of category? What kind of profile of students come to you?
Primarily, so from a student background perspective, we have 30% of IT engineer background students who come and do a postgraduate or master's program. We have management graduates, we have science background people, or a commerce and an arts background. So we have across all verticals. That's where the technical challenge lies for a lot of our students, because if you, for example, take an example of an engineering, you do an engineering, bachelor's engineering, and try and do a master's one, you can still continue the path of the basic engineering. But if you have to do the management part, you have to first learn about the management principles, then the sports part of it, the marketing principles, and then the sports part of it. So for us to streamline the academic content becomes even more challenging from a technical perspective, because 30 to 40% of our students who come from an IT and engineering or a different background who does not have an introduction of management. So that's where we have to first orient them, get them to so vis-a-vis the general management students who come for masters, they are not well versed with the statistics and the analytics background, which an IT and engineer is well versed with. So we have to balance it out, come up with the introduction program for all these students who come from a different background, to get them in the first year, align them with the base level, or even for the bachelors, we need to align them at a base level and then start delivering the USP what we offer in the market.
Interesting. And what kind of work experience do people come with when they join IISM?
So we have quite a few people who come with the 3, 5, and 7, 10-year work ex guys as well, who aspire to be in the sports management. See, the beauty of our field, and what I say our is you and me, we are enjoying this space, is that sports, a passionate person who's in a passionate sports person can try and make a career in business of sport, irrespective of which background you come from. If you have a passion and an opportunity which comes you would want to grab that. Somewhere deep down in our thing, and I always ask this question to a lot of parents, a lot of students. I said, you go back to your people and ask them a fundamental question, your uncle, aunt, mom, dad, cousins, anywhere. Are they making a career in their loved field? For us, sports offers that as an opportunity, that we can make a career in our loved field, which we like as a sports. So I think this is where the opportunity is, for irrespective of which background you come from, you can make a good successful career because you like sport, you want to be associated with sport, or you have played sport, but you did not see an opportunity when you left sport to make a good career. So that's how a lot of WorkX guys who come to us and say that, look, I always wanted to make a career, but at that point of time we didn't have an opportunity. So our parents insisted of going for a general management or an engineering. We pursued that, but now we see an opportunity to get re-engaged with sports and live our passion.
And so, roughly, what percentage of your current intake are people who have been in sports or played sports to a certain level, and then are trying to build sharper, like you have in your own way? And people, let's say, like me, who really haven't played sports at a senior level like you have, but are passionate about sports and therefore trying to find a career in it.
So right now, our current batch size, which is over 500 students, 80% of the student strengths have come from an active playing sports background.
I see.
Out of which, this year, I'm proud to say more than 20 students have represented at international level for different sports, who are pursuing management, bachelor's and master's degree at IISM. But maybe because of the injuries, form, a lot of other hurdles which they face during their playing days, which they which they feel, and they're academically inclined as well, which they feel that they can still get associated with sports.
When you say actively playing, what do you define? Because for lesser mortals like us, actively playing is playing downstairs every day also. So maybe what level do you define by actively playing?
Well, actively is the national and international. Basically, when you aspire to represent India, and maybe a injury hits you, or a form, or a competition, there are a lot of filters which comes into play when you are actively playing sport and you want to make a career. But that, because of these challenges, you sometimes have to take a call of leaving your decision and not pursuing sport purely because you are either injured or you're out of form, or somebody else replaces you who was better than you. And then your fallback options are very limited. But now with this opportunity, they see a good hope. They can get back to their federations, start their own companies, work in the good corporates, and then make a decent space for themselves.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, in the last so many years that we have interacted with students, including some of our team members who joined us from college and other places, I remember 4 or 5 conversations where people said, "I'm going to Australia to do an MBA, a sports
Yeah.
MBA." And I used to always wonder, and they would come and ask, and I would say, I'm not sure how the price to, let's say, reward ratio works out. Uh, while I know at one level you're biased when I ask you this question in your answer, but how do these things stack up? I only heard of Australia Sports MBA. I don't know if there are other. I know there's also UK.
Well,
There are a bunch of universities.
there's Europe, UK,
Yeah,
America,
yeah.
Australia. Across
So
all, there are sports management degrees.
if I'm somebody who's passionate about sports or has been actively playing, as you call it, uh, assuming I have access to resources to pay the fees in both places, how do these things stack up?
See, the fundamental thing is that a lot of people make that mistake of those who can afford it can easily absorb that as a cost without a bra, because there are a lot of advanced methodologies which are evolved in the foreign universities over the years. They've been there for last 20 years offering sports management degrees. So obviously their research work is very strong. Their processes are good. Their backup feeding informations for innovation is extremely good. But if you ask me, for a average middle class person, the return of investment, if you're going to secure a bank loan and then go there and pay X amount, when you come back, you will always you will land up in a specific pay package if you're a fresher. Irrespective of whether you spend 40 lakhs or a 60 lakhs, you will start with a 4 to 6 lakh job. So your return of investment, if you have to invest, those who can afford it can still afford to go there without a hitch. They can take that call, get that degree.
But even if they can afford it, the ROI argument still holds, right? So
you will still hold it. But my only technical challenge is beyond that. And I have said that at a number of forums as well. One of the key areas which we feel has a huge opportunity is Indianizing that content. See, the 4 P's of marketing remains the same globally. The application of those 4 P's is different in Australia, is different in Europe, is different in America, which is much advanced, and it's completely different in India. So how do you adapt and adjust yourself to have that learning when you start practicing is equally important for you.
Interesting.
And not many people address this as a critical area of Indianization. We always have a influence of Western thought processes, but we are still not a research-oriented country. We do not have reference materials to refer to, whether be it the Commonwealth Games of 2020 or 2011 World Cup of Cricket World Cup. Do we have any material for us to refer to, for us to take the learning from it and then put that as into practice? But you go to Commonwealth Games of Australia or Olympics in England, you have ready material available even digitally. For me, that is something India lacks because we are not that research focused and oriented in the sports space.
Interesting. So therefore, are you saying therefore that if I am a student evaluating sports MBA, if I am willing to or interested in working abroad for a few years, I should, and of course if I can afford it, consider international MBAs. And if I'm interested in working in India, then maybe I should look at an Indian MBA. Let's forget IISM for a minute. I mean, is that how I should look at decision making?
Ideally, yes. Purely from a different context perspective, I'll just give you 2 scenarios on this. See, a lot of students get carried away by securing loan and go there without referring to the policies they have for foreign students in their respective countries.
Oh, you mean from
and
immigration
now,
or a visa point of view?
Yes, and a lot of countries now stopped this as a practice which was earlier a good common practice to attract students and migration process. So they are allowed to pursue their master's degree or a bachelor's degree, and they're asked to go back to their country. So if you're spending that much money, then unless you secure a good job, and that percentage is very minimal, and that's a risk you have to take. And we put that into the India context. The commercials are much lower side. You still get a management degree, the bachelor's or a master's degree, which allows you, even if you do not pursue your opportunity into sports space, this degree will hold a good space for you to apply into any general management space. So it's a good opportunity to look at it if you keep that option open by keeping the doors and analyze it and weigh it properly. And that's where most of the parents and students make a mistake of not analyzing that. And I'm all for students to think about securing, because I still feel the way they practice in Australia, Europe, or America is way advanced than what we practice in India. And because we are only 10-year-old business or sport country.
Interesting.
Because you look at the football in Europe, it's a 40, 60-year-old history they have. So look at the database and the sensitive points they have there. Do we have that data? We don't have that data available for us to start working on.
But then
and the European
European
data will not be valid for India context.
Correct.
Because the metrics are different, the marketing strategies are different, the buyer is different, end consumer is different, fan engagements are different. A lot of things, if we have to compare that, we still don't have a loyalty program in established sport like cricket. Do we have a loyalty program? We don't have a loyalty program. Is there a merchandise existence? There is no merchandise existence in India.
Interesting. So then, while you call it a 10-year-old industry, some people would beg to differ with you in terms of at least the definition of space. But in these 10 years, are you seeing research happening? Are you seeing content being created that the next set of learners can benefit from? Or are we still at this more guru shishya thing where somebody's talking, somebody's learning, guest lectures, and then it's pretty much a transmission, whereas not a capture of
changing that pattern. For last 2 to 3 years, we have adopted a practice. So all our research work, which is to be published, is available on our website. And we make it a point that we have a minimum 95% primary data. That's been our endeavor and that's been our focus. The reason for it is, if not 100%, we would like it to be at least 95% data, which is a primary data. So we get our students to work on that data. Our students, along with our academic team, get involved in creating that data, compilation, preparing that data, and we release that on a platform like CII, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, so which are the government bodies, so which actually gets an establishment of acceptance. And a lot of sports personalities have started using those data as their reference points if they have to put across a point. So for me, last 3 years, we have started this as a practice. But I agree with you in terms of acceptance, we are still not there, because only about 30 to 40% of our student strength is inclined into research-oriented space.
I see. Interesting. So let's talk about MBA itself, okay? And let's talk about a career journey where a student has done, let's say, a bachelor's degree wherever, and now is saying I should do an MBA. And frankly, sports MBA does sound cooler and sexier than an MBA, right? So that's something that works. But a parent would stop and say, hang on, it sounds very cool and sexy, but are you not narrowing your options too much? And why don't you do an MBA and then go and apply to a sports company? Because then you have a broader, and you can also apply to a bank and an IT company and so on. So how should a parent and a child negotiate this balance between over specialization and broader? Because in my mind, MBA is meant to broaden your options, but sports MBA is kind of narrowing your options, right? So how should people think about these decisions?
Saumil, trust me, I get this question and my team get this question almost 10 times a day. Because a lot of times it's not the students, it's the parents. We have to take extra effort to counsel them.
The kids must be excited about doing something in sports, so that I can imagine that.
True, but we have to do a lot of work with their parents purely on the reason why parents still feel that, oh, mera beta MBA in sports management karke kya karega is the obvious question. But we have an answer. He has a management degree. Like every general management, first year is common, doing all your basic principles. And the second year is a specialization, whether you opt out for HR, marketing, operations, finance, then you go into that direction. Sports is no different in that. The business of sport is evolving. But you will always, if you're pursuing master's degree in sports management, you will always have that as your fallback option, that you have acquired the management knowledge first and then specialized into sports. So your management knowledge never goes west. You can you put that into good use if you have to think about a specialization part. But
So,
vis-a-vis, a general management person may take 3 months training program for him to adapt and adjust to a sports specialization part. Whereas these kids will be ready to start the work from day one.
interesting, but how's the market seeing it? If let's say I'm a bank, I am a consulting company, I am a IT company, I am a students on leaver, and I need to hire MBAs. Are these people willing to consider sports MBAs, or are they saying, hey, you know what, you're too specialized? You're just waiting for a good sports job, and you're going to leave me in 6 months, 1 year. How is the market responding to this? Your notion that it's finally it's an MBA and you have a foundation.
That's the first answer which I gave, that it requires an industry status. The moment that industry status comes into this space, automatically the organizations will start accepting that. Make no mistake, we have Star Sports, we have Sony Sports, organizations like yourself, SportsVillage, a lot of companies who are going into the corporate space are accepting this, along with the corporates who are now spending money into sports, like IMG Reliance and other Reliance foundations are open accepting these as a full-fledged job opportunities. But I
No,
agree with you.
I understand. Maybe let
I'm
me
coming to
clarify
your
my
point.
question. Yeah.
I'm coming to your point. I'm coming to.
Huh.
So this is one space, but there is like CIAT and others organizations like corporates who are doing little bit of work into the business of sports are open to accept this as a career opportunity. But again, when I said that in IPL itself, there are almost 150, 200 organizations who sponsor IPL, but do not have the trained force to manage the allotted funds which are reserved for sponsorships or any other sports activity association. But organizations like JSW, who are corporate oriented, are open in accepting this. So there are two segments which needs to have a good combination. And I agree with you that I would want to see that the insurance, the banking, all the FMCGs who are spending money in sports will look at this as a master's degree along with the sports specialization. So they can have the offerings to all these students because they have all the basic knowledge about the management with the specialization of sports.
Interesting. So the one other aspect of this, because and you also referred to it, that finally the sports industry is seen as a bunch of events.
Yes.
Right. And when you think of it as a bunch of events, that by nature this business becomes episodic, which means that there's a start and end to the business, and there is possibly a quiet time in between the next event.
True.
Right. So therefore, from a career point of view, right, how should students, or how are your students, and how should potential people think about this? That is this almost like a gig economy thing I'm going towards, that I will do work with IPL, then I'll do work with Cricket World Cup, then I'll do work with the Commonwealth Games, then I'll do work with the FIFA, and I have to keep going from gig to gig? Or how are people seeing it?
So we are experiencing that from the students' side right now. In last 3 to 5 years of our existence in the management, offering bachelor's and master's degree, the interesting shift is on twofold. There's one section of student who's always inclined in finding a space of pursuing a full-fledged 9 to 5 job into a structured organization. But on the other hand, some of the other students, which is a European and American culture, they are inclined in accepting a contract-based jobs. So like you mentioned, they finish the IPL and they get a 15-20 days job break and they start a Kabaddi League. When they finish Kabaddi League, then the ISL starts. When ISL is in the middle, they think of an option of a badminton league. So a lot of students are now opting out for a contract-based job. A, it gives you more money. B, you get 2 months off in a year. What you can do, you've earned enough money and you can think about doing something else as well. So we get two school of students where one student want to have a full-fledged secured job for him or her, and the other student segment who is open to look at this as an opportunity by having contract-based jobs.
Interesting. So what about working professionals? What about people who have a lot more experience? Should they consider sports MBA, or is it only for people starting out their careers?
See, ideally for established people, they can definitely consider sports as the MBA as their enhancement of knowledge. But like I said before, we are coming up with two more products as well for executive program for working professionals, and we are coming up with a postgraduate program in sports event management, because we see that as a huge opportunity in this industry. And we are not offering a MBA, but we are offering a master's 1-year postgraduate program for the sports people along with the working professionals, because I see, after 5 to 6 years of your work ex, you need to graduate into a next level, and for that you require more refined skills, more fine-tuning approach, and more decision making ability, handling that leadership role teams. So these are the skills which which is required for you to acquire, for you to give a better output.
Interesting. So how many so the sports thing is always very exciting and interesting. So anybody would say, yeah, I want to find a career in sports.
Yeah.
But how should people work in a sports company, intern in a sports company before putting down the money and the time for a sports MBA, or should it be the other way around?
I think it should be other way around, because you have a passion, so all the block gets ticked beforehand when you decide to take a admission. You are passionate about sport. You are clear about making a career.
Nilesh, kharcha bhi to ho raha na. So as a parent,
Not
you are
only
asking the
kharcha.
question of time and kharcha is happening. So how do you balance?
But then this is for the freshers or working guys. Because if it's for a fresher, any which way you're not thinking about your earnings. You're thinking about making a career and acquiring a degree. So for a fresher, you still need you have a passion and you want to make a career. So a lot of times what we share this as a fundamental guideline to a lot of parents and students, that the students who come to take exams at IISM before they take the admission, it's always a black and white process. He or she is interested in making a career in sports management, hence they are applying. Unlike the general management space, where you think about, I would want to explore, the first year is common, and then I will decide whether my interest goes from HR to marketing, I will opt out for a marketing. In our case, it's always very specific whether they want to make a career in sports or they do not want to make a career in sports. So there are no gray areas for a lot of these people who make this decision. Yes, but the time is taken a lot for them to convince their parents, because a lot of times the parents are not convinced about whether this is a viable career.
Correct.
Even our counselors take that much time to counsel parents more so than the student, because student is convinced that he or she wants to make a career because he's passionate about sport and he see himself or herself putting into that specific role.
So let's talk about this passion about sports a bit more, right? And you mentioned that around 80% of the students who come in are from active playing
That's right.
role. But if I may play the devil's advocate, if I am an active player, doesn't mean I know anything about the sports industry. I just know I'm a player. I go play. I see the bad part of the federations. I see the good part of the sponsorship. I see all of that stuff, right? And that event experience and so on. But frankly, I have no clue about the business of sport. I have no clue about the economy of sports. I'm a player. So to say, because I like to play cricket or badminton or football, I will therefore, I am passionate about a career in the business of cricket, football or sports is a stretch. So how do you handle that? It's not a stretch? Okay.
The reason I'll explain that as well. It's very interesting you are asking this question. I see it positively. A person who's playing sport, he or she, is always up for challenges, always ready to accept failures, always ready to understand and evolve from a situation. For me, that's a very positive side. How many times you see that? Because their decision-making ability is very good. Because you have a split second to take a right decision. And even if it's a wrong decision, you need to start taking the blame for it and then work upon for the next day to come back and start compete
but
again.
the question is
So
about
that
should they do a
I
sports
know,
MBA or a
I
normal
know,
MBA? That's the
I
question.
know. I was coming to that. Then imparting the required knowledge, that's our responsibility and our job to give them all the economics knowledge, the financial knowledge, the management knowledge, the marketing knowledge for them to get industry ready. But when they stand out in the market is because they have a 30 to 40% of a handicap of understanding scenarios, understanding situations, and working upon that as being a player.
I
Vis-a-vis,
see.
if you put
Okay.
that the same context into the general management space, their ability to understand in the real time takes more challenging task for them to overcome these situations.
Interesting.
And that's where these people will always have an upper hand to be that leader or start taking those key decisions and start taking up those responsibilities, because that's when you become industry ready. And if you put the same context applied into your workplace, you have a good handicap to start from day one.
Interesting. Interesting. Well played. Well played.
Thank you. But that's sport for you, and that's my learning.
Sure. So I have, I think, two last questions. Then we'll move to the question answers.
Sure.
If there are others. One is, who should not do a sports MBA?
Well, that's
Googly
a
है, ये जैसे
difficult
googly है,
question to
हाँ.
answer.
Yes. हम भी googly फेंकते हैं कभी-कभी.
That's a difficult question to answer. Well, I had to bat to survive my life for some time at many occasions. But see, there's no such thing as who should not do. But I would look at it, those who find it difficult in accepting challenges should always take a backseat of pushing yourself, because sport will always ask you to push the envelope. Sport will always offer new challenges. And for me, that's the most exciting part. Those who are always on the fence should think twice.
This is like in an interview. If you're asked what's your weakness, weakness is I work too hard.
No.
You're basically
No,
saying if you're a loser, don't do sports MBA. Everybody else should do sports MBA.
No. I'm not saying losers should not do. I am saying those who do not have an aspiration to bounce back should refrain. The losers, see, I'm absolutely fine. And I'm the first person to say that we lose more in our life than we succeed in our life.
Sure.
It's not about the failure. It's about how you look at the failure and how you want to work upon it determines you to cross the line. And for me, these are the skills you should possess when you want to make a career in business or sport. Because it's extremely challenging, but it's brilliantly satisfying.
And I hear you. What about advice to? I have two last questions. One was only one question, no two. Let me clarify.
Sure.
Advice to parents and students, and advice to potential employers.
See, parents to student to start with. Yes, for students, we don't need to worry about it because students are always interested or not interested. With regards to parents, yes, we being collaborating with Mumbai University, there's an official degree which is getting offered to a lot of our institute students, which allows him or her to be secure of having a degree, a management degree, specialized in a vertical of sports, business of sport, which gives them, they can always fall back to their degree and start applying to any banking, insurance firms or FMCG player, which will help them get a job. So that's something which a lot of parents come up with confusion about. Agar ye sports mein nahi hua, to kya hoga? So this is one answer. But if you ask me as a parent of two kids now, and I was fortunate that my parents allowed me to pursue my passion and make a career in sports. Look at yourself. Were you lucky enough to make a career in your like to love field? If the answer is yes, then you should support. But if the answer is no, see that opportunity into a child's future and allow him or her to pursue their dream.
Sure, that's a good one. What about advice to employers or potential employers?
See, I personally feel that last 2 years as an IISM, we've started one initiative organizing sports HR conclave. We want a lot of organizations to have their systems and processes in place. With that, the structured approach in the industry and in organizations will fall in. Eventually, that will help institutes like us and many more to start putting the internship and placement process in place, which is a established practice in any of the any of the B schools all over India, which eventually will help us cross the line of having this as an industry. Because a lot of times unorganized sector hai, challenges aate hai, pro rata basis pe reactions aate hai, but the scale for a lot of employers will come when you have the systems and processes in place for start attracting these management graduates.
Interesting. Great, Nilesh. This is fantastic. I learned a lot, and thank you so much for being sporty about the interaction. We'll just open it up to questions and maybe spend 10-15 minutes on that. Vidya, let me know as you have questions. So I see one which is essentially about the cost. What kind of cost levels should typically people look at when they consider sports MBA in India and something abroad?
Well, the disparity is this big. If I can put myself hand into a big frame, the India cost is managed by the generalized UGC guideline, which we operate off because we are governed by UGC. And Mumbai University governs the overall fee structures. So, which is a standard MBA practice, which comes about 6.5 to 7 lakh as a frame. But if you start thinking about Australia, Europe, or America, it goes from 1 year, which is about 30 to 40 lakh, goes up to 60 lakhs. So that's the huge gap in terms of how you look at that. And then when you look at the return of investment part, then I don't need to dwell upon more.
Sorry, maybe I missed the number. The international ones could be 30, 40 to 60, 70 lakhs. And Indian MBAs would be at what range?
About 6 to 7 lakhs.
And this is a 1-year program, 2-year program?
No, this is a 2-year program.
2-year program, full-time program.
2-year program, full-time program. Ours, I can only say about our institute, which we have collaborated. We have a very, very intense, more than 900 hours of learning each year, plus the practical components is along with the submissions is very, very intense for a lot of students, including bachelors and masters. So what we look for is people who are, and that's why we have our own entrance exam, through which we filter students. We have created and customized, which is approved by Mumbai University as the entrance exam to take an admission for the masters and the bachelor's program at IISM.
Oh, really? Yeah. What kind of questions do you ask in their entrance exam?
Well, we have, luckily, we don't have too many questions about the sports part, but the cognitive learning, the statistics, analytic mind is what is required. For us, what we assess is certain level of aptitude in a student and a candidate. What we look for, whether he or she, after playing sport, can become a successful industry expert.
Interesting. I see two questions.
So we have a cutoff as well.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure, go
ahead. We have a cutoff as well.
We have a cutoff as well. Yes, we have a cutoff as well.
Oh boy. Okay, I see two questions, and maybe three actually. They seem to be correlated. How successful is MBA in sports management in India? What is the placement percentage in sports management? And after doing MBA in sports, what are the various career options and how much do students earn on average? All of those are around successful. Basically saying, what's the ROI and why should you do it? Right?
I would start by saying that you would our last 5 to 7 years of experience in terms of the growth is phenomenal, because our first year student, if I have to put that into a comparative analysis, he started with 13,000 as his internship convertible into placement. Eventually, it got into about 25,000 salary. Today, he's drawing a 36 lakh rupee package in 8 to 9 years of span. So that's a phenomenal shift, but not everyone can go into that because he had the ability to go up the curve, which he did. But the average salary package, starting package, still revolves around 3.5 lakh to 4 lakh because the industry is only heading into that. But when it comes to return of investment, if you have a 3 to 5 year work ex, you start with 5 to 6 lakh as well. That entirely is up to you how you present yourself into the interview scenarios. But the experience and the other skills which you acquire and the knowledge, of course, helps you put into a good space. But the good opportunity is the growth pattern, which unlike the general management space has a very steady approach. Sport has a good the curve, fast track process. If you start performing, the talent is so limited, you still get a good opportunity, and the demand is
Oh,
fairly good for
interesting,
those.
interesting. This is almost like a small fish, big pond, or big fish, small pond kind of thing, right? So
Absolutely.
if you're a big fish in a small pond, you'll do better. Okay, interesting.
Exactly.
So one of the related questions: what is the placement percentage in sports management? Maybe for your institute
Well,
or overall.
we always maintain that we don't have a 100% placement track record, and we do not commit placement as well. We
Hmm,
assure internship because placement is always subject to individuals along with the company and the organizations,
hmm,
which we don't have a control over. But yes,
sure.
we push our organizations to consider that as a candidate. But the process, what we have is we assure minimum 3 to 4 interviews to each of the candidate to respective companies. And if you
Hmm,
don't perform well, then obviously
hmm.
you have something which you need to work upon. But
Okay,
the percentage is about 70% is what we have maintained as our placement track record in IISM.
70%. Okay,
But
that's just.
but that's something which is because a lot of students wish to go abroad for some further knowledge.
Hmm,
Some
hmm,
people start their own this they become entrepreneurs. So that's
hmm,
where it varies. And I personally feel that there should not be a weightage about the percentage of an institute, purely because a lot of times it varies. Sometimes the
hmm,
packages
hmm.
varies, sometimes the percentage varies. And
Sure,
because it's
sure.
a nascent, the industry is at a nascent stage, you
Hmm,
don't have a thumb rule to rely upon. Like you have done your IM and you know how that there's a set guideline for a general management and there's a pathway carved out for it. In our space, we do not have that as a
hmm,
design pathway.
hmm. Interesting. So, is sports analytics a part of the MBA sports management course? What is the growth opportunity in the Indian market? I guess maybe so.
It's part of our offerings for sure.
Okay.
We do not have a specialization only because, again, like I said before, the demand supply ratio is still very minimal in the sports analytics, data analytics, and
Which means there are not enough
space.
jobs for that as an
There
independent.
are
Is that
not
what you meant?
enough jobs in that field. But just for give a
Hmm,
candidate a
hmm,
confidence that we have one student who is an IIT Madras person who did 5 years, 6 years into industry and pursuing our PGP program to
okay.
acquire the knowledge in the business of sport. So
Hmm,
yes, there are opportunities, but it still is a very nascent stage because the understanding of data requirement in our industry has not evolved to a level where we can
hmm.
consider this. A lot of organizations can start funding in those initiatives, which is a common practice globally.
So therefore, the corollary to the fact that it's nascent is that if it's going to grow and if you get in now, you pretty much have a good opportunity to grow.
I see. If you ask
Hmm,
me,
hmm,
in next 3 to 5 years, data analytics has a huge opportunity. But
hmm,
I'm reserving myself purely because again, it's always a demand supply ratio. If
hmm,
the
hmm.
demand increases, for us to increase the supply is not difficult. We are only
Sure, sure.
restrained right now because there is no demand in this particular space. But
Interesting.
that's the future for India, and I personally feel
Hmm.
that that's where India will have an upper hand.
Great. There's one question which seems to be for me. I'll come to that in a minute. Let me finish the question for you. Is there any distance
So
mode program in IISM for a working professional?
we don't have a distance mode. We have an executive program which we have started marketing as called the Edge, which is a weekend executive program spread over 9 months. And
Hmm.
informations are available on iismworld.com website as well for you to refer. And if you wish to call for our counselors, they'll help you out, take you through all the nitty gritties of the offering.
I forgot to clarify. You are based in Mumbai, correct?
We are based on the only place we operate is in Mumbai.
अच्छा, no other branches. ये brand इधर ही
No,
है.
we
Okay.
see. I mean, it's always good to control the quality because we feel
Yes.
that the kind of quality we offer, we can
Yeah,
control
sure,
that better in Mumbai.
sure. But a relevant question to say where in India, which other parts of the country have sports MBA institutes? I know quite a few are in Mumbai actually. Now that
I'm
I think
sure
about it.
there are quite few in Mumbai.
There's one in Calcutta, I
Yeah,
know. There's a
but
couple
there
of
is one
few in
in
Mumbai.
Kolkata. They are into a PGP space, not into an
Yeah,
MBA
yeah,
space.
yeah, yeah.
There is one in Chennai, which I
Okay.
know, and then National Sports University have just by the government of India have just opened at National Sports University as well.
That's in Delhi, is it?
No, I think it's in Manipal.
Okay. Okay, I missed that.
But whether it's a science base or a management space, I have absolutely, I still don't have a complete knowledge about it.
Got it. So there's one question here, which is actually, I guess, to me, it says, after doing MBA, how will we grow in SportsVillage itself? You are supposed to be answering the question, but let me try and answer that. I think from my perspective, the fact that there is an interest in sports and a commitment to do a sports MBA is kind of signaling that there is seriousness about this career trajectory. And so to that extent, there is definitely better signaling value of the fact that you are serious about this sport, this industry at least. Then the question is, did you pay attention in class? And therefore did you learn what you should learn? And so the foundation of the structures around marketing, finance, ops, and so on. If those foundations are strong, then those foundations lend themselves to faster career growth because of structures. But I would not say that if somebody doesn't have an MBA, you can't do as much. Sometimes you just have to work harder, or you have to find those structures better. And the other piece, I guess, is a network. That if you're part of a class of 100, 200, you're part of an institute like IISM, others, you're then part of alumni network, which then gives you access to reach out to people to get work done, to find introductions and so on. So there are different benefits, I guess, of the MBA.
Can I add one more thing in this?
Please.
See, one of the areas where everyone needs to look after is how to have your communication skills, your presentation skills. These are the soft skills which are extremely critical for you to survive in the industry. The knowledge is the most essential part, but how do you communicate and share that becomes relevant for you to be a good employee of that organization, which sets you apart in that organization and eventually gives you a growth path for you to succeed in life. I think a lot of students do make this mistake, and I have said that at n number of forums. For me, when I started IISM, we made a lot of mistakes, but we learned from it. Sure. But we made sure that we do not repeat those mistakes, because unfortunately, we did not have any reference points. Right now, you have more options to start referring to and then evolve. Because, if you learn from somebody else, you are a better person and a better resource to organizations like Saumil, who are doing a phenomenal job in the industry.
Sure. Thank you. Very kind of you. One other question that had come earlier was, after doing MBA in sport, what are the various career options?
Interesting. Right now, because I said that there is no industry, there are two primarily focused options, career options. A lot of students are going for. One is the obviously operations and management space, which involves event management and other peripheral things of the ops and the management part. And the second is obviously the sales and marketing and the branding space. These are the two key verticals where a lot of students are getting jobs. And why I think has this particular space is this will grow. The specialization will start getting more and more opportunities for you to engage. If you think of, but do not be very, very selective that I will only work in a branding space. There are a lot of students who make these mistakes, and we counsel them at IISM. We tell them that do not restrict yourself, that even if you like to make a career in that space, be open about accepting a knowledge and acquire that knowledge with getting an experience with other things. And then when you have that overall knowledge, then you can think about a specialization as well.
Wonderful. I think we have covered a lot of good ground, and I think we have got good clarity around what do's and don'ts around sports MBAs and opportunity. Looks like there's a lot of excitement happening, and looks like you're in a good space. Thank you so much for clarifying a lot of the stuff around the sports MBA. You mentioned as the last part. You said you have two kids. Are both of them going to do sports MBA?
Well, I hope so. I hope so, because they are interested in sports. And my only thing is that every child should start playing sports, because there are a lot of places, like even in Pune, you have one management offering sports. You have there are other institutes who have started offering sports management as a degree, which is very, very encouraging. I for once, I always say across all platforms, and I get criticized by a lot of people, that competition is good for business. Even in education, in our space,
Sure,
competition is good because the industry is going to grow. There
sure,
is one in
sure,
Navi
sure.
Mumbai. So all these institutes
Mm,
who are
mm,
offering
mm.
sports management, they will actually head in one direction of making sure that the industry establishes.
This has been wonderful, Nilesh. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your insights on the sports MBA piece. On behalf of Sports Village, all the panelists and all the other folks who are going to benefit from this interview going ahead, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me here. It was wonderful interacting.
Pleasure. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.